So hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Dolly. I'm the Director of Technology here at PMsquare. I know many of you. I also see many people in the chat who I don't know. So it's great to kind of digitally meet you. In the time that we have today, I'm going to be going through PMsquare's methodology for making sure that if you saw something exciting today, something that moved you, that you would like to try to implement, whether it's Cognos or in Corridor or Trifacta, that you're able to do that in a way that is successful. And we're going to talk about what does success mean, how do we go about doing that, and how do we, how can we measure that success both for ourselves and to justify to others to say, hey, we tried to do this analytics project and look at how successful it is. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen here and we'll get started. Okay, so how do we go about doing this at PMsquare? How do we make sure that what we're building is useful and we get the most value out of it? Now, this is a presentation, kind of parts of it I've given it before. A lot of times it takes an hour. But we've kind of updated it, modernized it, and we've made sure, and we have about half an hour to get it done. So, get your, put on your learning hat because I'm going to be going through this fast. And please do ask questions because I'd love to answer some of them at the end of the session. So what are we going to talk about? Why is an adoption strategy necessary? What does adoption mean in 2020 or 2021 as we have upcoming? What are the most common barriers to adoption, and what does a modern approach to user adoption look like? So why is it necessary? Well, there's a couple of reasons, right? One, change is hard but necessary, and people are afraid of it. So having a strategy can help ease some of that discomfort and take something that's hard and make it a little easier for you. But in my mind, the biggest reason is that a technology investment without an adoption strategy is less of a plan and it's more of a wish, right? So when you go out and you say, hey, that Encorda thing we saw was really cool and we would like to implement that at our organization. A lot of times what I find over the years is my customers get really laser focused on the technology aspect of it. What does the technology do? How can I roll out the technology? Server sizing and data transit and all this other stuff. And they don't think as much about, once I have the data into the Encorda engine, how am I going to get it out? And more than that, how am I going to make sure that the people who need this data not only receive the data, but understand how to interact with the technology in the best way to get the most out of it? So let's take a little stroll down history lane. If we go back to when I started my career in analytics, which was around 2010, what did user adoption mean back then, okay? What user adoption meant back then, and what did that world look like? Well, it looked like a world of a single enterprise BI tool for all users. In my career, that was Cognos. Other people, it may have been Business Objects or Crystal Reports or something like that. But there was one BI tool that was intended to be used by everyone. There was a single IT-driven ETL workflow. So all data flowed through ETL. We did not have cool things like Trifacta back then. If you wanted data in the BI tool, it went in the data warehouse. IT owned all data sources. There wasn't, Salesforce. Did it even exist in 2010? I'm not sure, but if it did, it was nothing like it is today. The plethora of cloud sources, file type sources, log sources that we have today, a lot of those didn't exist. And even if they did, they were owned by IT. Whereas now we find that there's kind of a much broader data world, and not all of it's in IT's control. All content back then was created by developers, and if you wanted to do self-service, it was really done in Excel. That was the only option. There was some, Tableau did exist in 2010. If you recall, in the Cognos 10 days, we had Workspace Advanced, and there was some traction with Workspace Advanced, but it was still, for the most part, if somebody wanted to do self-service, they were doing it in Excel. And what user adoption meant, the question we asked back then is, are people using the reports that we built? That was what user adoption was all about. I spent 6 months working on these Power Cubes and these reports that sit on top of it. Are people using it? It was a simple question to ask. and a relatively simple question to answer. But as we'll see, it's the questions have gotten more complex, but the ability to answer them has actually gotten better. So what does it mean in 2021? In 2021, it's a different and more complex set of questions. Have we built an end-to-end data platform that has the right data for the right users who have the right skills with the right access to the right features at the right time? It's a lot more than, hey, I built this pretty report. Are people actually running the report? What we have to ask ourselves now is our analytics ecosystem meeting the needs of our user communities? And you'll notice it's not user community, it's user communities, and that's important. Keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. You'll see why I think by the end, why I pluralize that word. So what are the three barriers that I see and that PMsquare sees in our customer base to user adoption? Well, the first one is that we don't let them adopt. And this is particularly true, we find, of maybe longtime Cognos customers, where, and it's definitely gotten better over the last few years, but we still see a lot of this where we're not letting our end users adopt. And the way we're doing that is, say, we're turning off self-service features. So, people can't use data modules, they can't use exploration, they can't use dashboards, they can't schedule their own content, right? We've turned all of that off. Also, when we choose not to upgrade to a new release, that's really kind of a stealth way of not letting them adopt. If we're keeping our users 2 or 3 or 5 years behind as far as features are concerned, we're not letting them adopt the tool because we're not giving them a modern experience. We're not giving them the things that they expect or need out of an enterprise analytics solution. Now, why do we do this? The biggest reasons in my mind are that the BI team themselves are unfamiliar with the new features, and so they don't feel comfortable letting other people use it when they themselves don't know how to use them. And that's not a knock on the BI team. But your classic enterprise reporting job is a job, right? It's a full-time job. So when do you have time to learn how to make the most out of dashboards or data modules? You may not have a lot of time. There are also serious data quality concerns when it comes to letting end users adopt self-service tools in particular, but really any tool that's going to allow them to manipulate their own data. And then finally, there's a fear of what they'll do. So one thing, and I will tell you, I've heard this like dozens of times when I'm talking to people about, hey, are you letting your end users build their own data sets or build their own data modules yet? The question, the concern that comes up of, well, how am I going to stop someone from building, say, a full outer join if I let them build their own data modules, right? The fear of what they'll do. And these are all valid objections, by the way. But the reality is that what ends up happening when we don't let people adopt is that we have this intention of what you see here, some combination of what you see here, like Trifacta for data wrangling, and Corda for kind of a modern data platform, and Cognos for enterprise analytics and enterprise grade self-service, right? But maybe you use Tableau or Click or SciSense or ThoughtSpot or something like that. This is what you've invested in as kind of a analytics technology. But what ends up happening is this. And if you're lucky, maybe a little bit of this, right? But if you don't let your end users adopt, you just push them into Excel and Power BI. And maybe, Power BI is an awesome tool. Maybe you're fine with that. But what I find is that even with a tool like Power BI, if where it exists is, hey, my end users are choosing to use it and I'm not involved in that process, the BI team is usually not very happy. The second barrier to adoption I want to talk about is that we don't support our end users. So this takes a lot of forms. Oftentimes, we haven't made our enterprise users available of what the platform has to offer or what features exist in it. So even if maybe we are comfortable letting them use the features, they can't, we haven't really educated them. They don't know about it. And so they just go there to download their reports and run them to Excel, right? When they do come to us for help, they can't find help when they're using the enterprise platform. And then finally, and this is kind of a less intuitive one, but I consider it a form of not supporting the end users, and that is that they don't use the content that we've been produced for them, that has been produced for them, right? And that's a form of not supporting them, because what they need out of an enterprise platform oftentimes is, I just need to go there to get the data that I can trust, that I need to do my job. And if we're not providing them with that, we're not really supporting them in their usage of the platform. Now, why do we do this? One, there's no adoption plan. Also, the BI team may be unfamiliar or unimpressed with the self-service features, and so we're not out there evangelizing for our end users to use them. And the final thing is, the feedback system from the end user to the BI team is broken. And that will be a big thing that we're going to highlight over the course of this presentation. Now, what does that look like? This is like the field of dreams fallacy, right? It's, hey, we built all this stuff, we invested in this platform, we rolled out all this great data. Now, of course, people are going to come use it, right? In reality, there has to be a lot more than availability and for end users to engage. We really need a plan to support them and make it happen. The final barrier to adoption is that you yourself or may not even know if they're adopting. You're rolling out the reports. In the Cognos context, we have the audit package. Maybe you're looking at the audit package, but maybe you're not. I have a lot of customers who aren't really looking at it. And so we don't know, is usage going up or down? Did that big project we worked on really hit the mark, or did we miss the mark? Are we making the right decisions for our platform? This really comes from two places. One, it's an inability to collect relevant adoption data. The delivered audit reports in Cognos, for example, are good. They're not great, and they do have gaps in them, which we'll talk about a little later in our conversation today. And also a culture of making decisions based on past experience. So, hey, what we always do is we do this ETL workload, we get stuff into the enterprise data warehouse, and then we build the end users 5 or 10 standard reports. And that's what we've been doing for 10 years, and it was really successful 5 years ago. So that's what we're gonna do today. Well, maybe, right? Maybe that's what you should do today, but maybe it isn't. And how do you know whether it is or is not? From here on, that's what we're gonna be talking about in this presentation. So what does this look like? It looks like the ostrich in the sand. It's, hey, what we've been doing, it works great, and it's going to continue to work great forever, so we're just going to keep doing it, right? Now, what does a modern approach to user adoption look like that allows you to overcome these limitations that we've talked about? At PMsquare, what we do is we take a persona-based approach to business intelligence. And what this comes out of is really our experience when we started developing our own software. I was put in charge of that division, and I 6 months or 6 weeks into it realized that I don't know anything about developing software. I don't know anything about product management. I had to learn all of that. I'm a BI and DW guy traditionally. And so I set about doing that. I found videos and books that I could read about product management and UX and UI design and that sort of stuff. And over the course of that, I realized that the principles I was learning were really appropriate for BI, because in the BI world, it's different from other parts of IT, where in networking, you're not really interacting with the end user a whole lot, except for that, hey, the networks, I can't get on the internet call that you may get occasionally. But in BI, what you are really, that is where the rubber meets the road for an IT department when it comes to having an impact on the business. And what you're offering out of your Cognos Analytics environment is really a product that your end users are intended to either consume in the form of reports or interact with in the form of your Cognos environment. And so I kind of took this product and design-oriented thinking and applied it to the business intelligence workflow. So with that said, what does this look like? It's a 6-step process where you identify target personas, you define the underserved needs of those personas, determine what value you can offer them, then look at what features can deliver the value, design a user experience to match what you have, and then measure and repeat. Now, identifying target personas feels really fuzzy and touchy-feely to longtime IT people, I find, who are used to making decisions around technology based on kind of the feature functionality IT checklist. This is very different. It may feel a little foreign to you, but I promise you it's very powerful. And you cannot skip on the identifying target personas phase. It is the foundation of everything you're going to do afterwards. you take a look at you come up with theoretical personas for your end users using things like demographic, psychographic, needs-based, technology adoption style research that you're going to do. You come up with these hypothetical personas that could be casual users, power users, directors, but you don't come up with too many. So you're not going to have finance power user, supply chain power user, marketing power user, right? You need 3 to 5 personas, and that's going to carry you through the rest of the exercise. And when I say you build these personas, I mean you really build them, you map them out, and you come up with what these people look like in your organization. So here's an example of an actual persona that I've used. It's Larry, the power user. And you can see on here that Larry's a financial analyst who helps prepare regular monthly, quarterly, and yearly reporting, while also handling ad hoc data requests. And you go through and say, what are Larry's goals? What are Larry's challenges? What responsibilities does he have? What does he like and dislike? All of that. You come up with this, and this is kind of a hypothesis of who your persona is, your power user persona. You write all this out, and then you go through and you do some reality testing. So you're going to define the underserved needs of this persona. And it's going to take the form of a hypothesis about what benefits this person would like. What benefits would Larry like? Now, keep in mind, Larry is a theoretical person. You don't want to make a persona that is like the actual human being Larry in finance, right? Because you're going to, like one day Larry's going to see his persona up on a screen or something. He's going to feel really weird, right? So you anonymize it. But you come up with these benefits and you formulate them as a series of statements, and you take it out and you do actual customer interviews, okay? And you ask people, what does this statement mean to you? How might it help you? How valuable would this benefit be and why? And then once you're done with the interviews, you're going to confirm, classify, and rank these hypotheses in a hierarchy of needs. That's going to look something like this. So you can see the needs here are the benefit statements that we came up with that Larry might like, okay? So we actually go to 4 or 5 or 6 of our theoretical power users, and we sit down and we ask them, okay, how important is this, would the benefit or the need of complete tasks without IT permission be to you? How important is it to be able to utilize your own data sources? And then once we go through that, and we inevitably, we come up with 15 or 20 of these need statements, we end up throwing out some of them. And some are surprising, things we thought would be really important. Turns out our users don't really think are that important. Things that we didn't think were important, it turns out they really care about a lot. Once we do that, we kind of bucketize them into benefits. So you can see here, for example, complete tasks without IT permission, utilize my own data sources, and easily share content. We put into the work independently bucket. Automate repetitive tasks and quickly answer data requests, we put into the save time bucket, okay? This kind of allows us to figure out what exactly do our power users need? What exactly do our consumers need? Once we've done that, we need to take an honest look about what we can offer, what we currently offer our end users, and what we can offer them, okay? And you notice up to this point, we're not talking at all about software platforms, and certainly not talking about the features of those platforms. This is the first time we start looking at that. Now, first you're going to ask yourself, what do I offer today? So in our example, you say, okay, Larry can use Cognos, Excel, or Tableau. And what are we offering today to give Larry the ability to work independently, that bucket that we created out of the needs statements that we went through with Larry? And we say, okay, today we're offering Larry a very low ability to work independently in Cognos. Now that's not because Cognos can't do it, okay? But it's because in this example, maybe you've turned off all the self-service features, so Larry can't access them. Then we're gonna go through and kind of bucketize it and look at each tool that we offer. What do we do today? And then we ask ourselves, what can we do? Can we offer Larry a high ability to work independently in Cognos? Both can Cognos do it? The answer is yes. But can we culturally do it? Are we able to allow people culturally to do whatever they want and work independently in Cognos? If the answer is no, then we need to design an experience that does not require our end users to work independently in Cognos. Maybe we have them use Tableau, okay? Because what we're doing is we're tailoring the experience to deliver maximum value to those people. After this, we're going to align the features to values. So in this case, once we've gone to say, we say, okay, we can offer the most value in Cognos to our power users. We're going to go ahead and figure out what features should they actually have. And the thing I like about this process is it's a secret way to also design how to assign capabilities and even some security to your end users without doing a capabilities or security project. This falls naturally out of the persona-based BI process. Finally, we design a user experience to match this, okay? So we're gonna come up with enablement. Are we gonna have office hours, documentation and videos, training? When people talk about user experience, normally they just talk about the software. That's all they're thinking of. But I'm advocating that you think bigger. Your entire BI process is part of the user experience, okay? In the case of power users, maybe it means they can sometimes skip the ticketing process and that we're gonna get them involved in the community. We are gonna look for things like bacon. And when those things come up, we are going to push our power users to go to it because we know they're going to learn a lot from it. We're not going to put too many rules on our power users. We're going to do lots of communication. And we're going to let our power users do things like make their own folders, save content, share content with people, and use all the authoring or modeling features. And we can feel confident that it's the right thing to do because we've gone through this persona-based BI process. Now, of course, we don't want things to be a Wild West, right? So maybe we come up with data policy training and we can revoke our end users, our power user status if they go outside our data policies. Finally, we measure and repeat. Typically, I do this with a single persona. So I would go all the way through with power users and then go back and go all the way through with consumers. That's if you're trying to revamp your BI practice. If instead you're investing in a lot of new tools, we're going to do all the personas at once. And doing this exercise is the key to helping us figure out what tools to purchase. What tools do we want to invest in? If you're looking at, okay, I'm currently using Informatica and Oracle for my data warehouse, and I want to consider maybe a new, more modern way of doing things that is a comprehensive data platform like Encorta, not just a data warehouse. I would take a persona-based approach to make that decision. Once we go live, we communicate like crazy, we monitor behind the scenes, and we gauge our success or failure to repeat with the next persona. Now, how do we do that? One way we advocate that you do that at PMsquare is with Thrive. And I will be quick about this because I recognize that it's 5:12 Eastern time. Thrive is a piece of software that we built that pulls data out of the Cognos audit information and presents it to you in a really easy to digest format and does some really nice things like help you understand your licensing. And it does proactive notification of reoccurring errors or failing reports, that sort of stuff. Now, in the case of the persona-based approach, really what's very helpful is, let's say we take this persona-based approach, we roll out new features to our power users, okay? You went through this whole exercise with me, and it's go live time, and we're giving our power users the ability to do all this crazy stuff, okay? All these new features they never had before. Now, what are we gonna do to make sure that it's going well? Well, we're gonna come into Thrive, we're gonna create a new custom filter. Maybe we call this, power users, okay? And I'm gonna go through and I'm actually gonna add these people to this group. So I'm just gonna grab a big old bucket of people for purpose of today's presentation. Now I can do a cascading filter that like maybe I also only want to look at particular reports that those people have used or particular folders that they have access to. But in this case, this is our power user pilot group. And we're going to save this group. You can see it here. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to select the power user group from this drop-down filter, and I'm going to see everything those people are doing in Cognos. So I can use this to really easily monitor, have these people created reports? Have they created data modules? Have they created dashboards, okay? I can go to the reporting view and see, okay, what all objects, what reports are these people interacting with? What reports are they running? I can go to the schedule view and see what schedule objects are these people interacting with. So a lot of capabilities that you have here, in this case it's none, but a lot of capabilities that you have here. And One thing I would say, none is a very important data point, by the way. If you're rolling out features, you come in here and you see nobody's using them. Say we just gave these people the ability to schedule reports. We want to know, are they actually doing it? Here we can come and see that they're not. So we know that we need to go out and say, hey, power users, we notice you're not scheduling any report. Do you need any reports? Do you need some additional training, et cetera, et cetera? So another thing to note, and this is the final thing I'll say, this is about Thrive. This is in the lab. So this is a new version of Thrive. It's scheduled to come out in Q1 of next year. And the one thing I want to note here is you'll see now we have multiple icons up here. Okay. So this new version coming out in Q1 will be able to pull audit data from multiple BI tools and display it in one pane of glass. So if you, like many of my end users, suddenly, or in many of my customers, suddenly find themselves having to support Power BI as well, you'll be able to use Thrive to have one place to see who is using Power BI, who is using Cognos, and what for. And more importantly, with Power BI purges its audit log after 60 days. Thrive will allow you to retain that audit information indefinitely. Okay, so to wrap up here, what is our approach and what does it look like? We do this persona-based BI as an engagement, okay? This is I'm putting on, I guess, my sales hat for a second here. Now, this is approach, I mean, anybody can do this, right? You can take this approach and do it yourself, but if you would like help doing it, this is an actual engagement we do at PMsquare. We help people do this either to revamp their existing BI process or to make decisions about what data prep, data warehouse, data platforms, BI tools should I use. It's typically a 4 to 12-week process. It's a tool agnostic approach. So I know many of you think of us as a Cognos company, and we are a very, very long-standing, well-versed Cognos company, but we're not going to come in and tell you to just, hey, we use Cognos, so no matter what happens, the findings are going to be to use Cognos. That's not how we do it, right? We provide all the templates and documentations. We follow the process outlined above. What you get out of it is a user experience tailored to each persona, a rationalization of your tools and processes, what processes are good, what tools are good, what processes need to change, what tools need to change. We also, what falls out of it naturally, as I mentioned, is updated security and support strategy. We document all our findings and recommendations and help you do an executive report out that's led by us. So with that said, I am going to wrap up the presentation. I want to thank you for your attention and participation today, and see what questions, if any, we have. So
yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. Great presentation. And honestly, this presentation really resonates for me because as I've observed the industry, as I've been in it for a decade plus, the needs of the analytics user have absolutely changed. They've changed very dynamically and very distinctly. And IBM, as a software developer, as a software supporter, has successfully changed with it. They've evolved. We all saw Rachel's presentation today. Cognos can do incredible things. Cognos is absolutely a top-notch self-service tool. But what has not kept pace with IBM's development has been the evolution of existing legacy Cognos implementations for some. And I feel like the reason that has not happened is exactly the pain points that you've talked about here. There hasn't been a rationalization done internally. There hasn't been an evaluation to really figure out and make an intentional and articulate decision about how do we leverage this new functionality? How do we change the stripes of our BI implementation on Cognos to start using the new features? And really without that, you're never going to evolve past what Cognos 10 was. And so I guess my question for you, Ryan, is for that customer who has done all their upgrades, they're on 11, 1R7 or R6 right now, but they haven't really achieved success with data modules, with data sets. They're current, they're on the right version right now, but they're just not seeing that pop. What would you tell them is really the first step in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the first step would be, I think, to take a hard look at your processes and who are you doing all this stuff for, and is it the audience you want, right? Like, there's the audience you have, and just frankly, in a lot of existing Cognos deployments, it's the traditional, I log in and I click a couple prompts and get an Excel spreadsheet audience, right? And you need to ask yourself, is that the audience you want? Or do you want a different audience? And if so, how do you get that different audience? Because that's going to drive the adoption of something like data sets and data modules, right? It all needs to come out of the needs of that user community and that persona. If you take the approach of, hey, data modules are cool, it's a cool technology, and we just want to use it, I'm not going to say you won't have success, because you can have a lot of success doing it on the IT team, right? And in that case, you are the persona. You may not think of it that way, but you are doing development for the persona of BI team. But if you just take a purely technology-centric approach where, hey, we're rolling this out because it's the new feature, and you're not thinking about who are we rolling it out for, what audience is going to get the most out of it, and how do we have the maximum impact with that audience, that's when you don't get traction.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. So we've got time for a couple more questions. Before we do that, though, we do have a poll that we want to pop up, and the poll really has to do with how many BI tools your organization has today. We've talked about multi-tool reality for a lot of different customers out there. The days of having one enterprise reporting tool and that being the only thing you have internally, and all users internally get directed to that, those days are kind of over for a lot of organizations. So this poll is going to give you a couple of different options here: 1 to 2 tools, 3 to 5, or 6+. We'll let that run for a couple minutes and see what the feedback is from our audience today, and then we'll share the results. But while we wait for that to come together, I've got a couple other questions here for you, Ryan. So Ryan, can PMsquare Thrive show usage of existing Query Studio queries and reports? This person's users still use Query Studio as an ad hoc reporting tool.
Yeah, that is something. When I mentioned that we have a release coming in Q1, that our intention is to put that into that release. So we're going to put Query Studio and Analysis Studio into that release. Right now, Thrive does not show that, but as of the Q1 release, it will.
Excellent. Now, the next question is, when you go into these persona-based BI engagements, where do you find the most resistance?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, oftentimes it's on the it's on in 2 places. One, there's the entrenched power user who is using a tool and really doesn't want to move off of it. And honestly, I don't think you should try to force that, right? If you've got someone who's off in their little Tableau world and like having incredible success, I wouldn't fight it too hard, right? That's part of what the persona-based BI engagement will tell you, is like, who are the power users who you shouldn't go after? Every Tableau user is not your target. Some of them are really happiest in Tableau, and you need to let them go. But the other place that I run into the most resistance is frankly on the BI team, because we're coming with a message that can sometimes be a pretty radical change. And when we go through this process, we're not coming in as PMsquare to tell you the way you're doing things is wrong. Not at all. A lot of what you're doing today is right, and we're there to help you identify that, make the argument for that, but also to help you figure out, if you're not having the impact that you'd like, how can you? And it's all about determining who the right people are for you to have that impact on, right? And so those are really the 2 places. Is one, it's the entrenched power user who isn't very friendly to getting involved with this IT process. But 2, it's typically not everyone on the BI team, but frankly, sometimes there are people on the BI team who need a lot of help buying in, and we're here to help with that.
So we'll go ahead and close the poll now, and we've got some pretty interesting results here. Almost a dead even split between 1 and 2 tools and 3 and 5. We've got 1% of folks that have 6+ tools internally. So this definitely shows that we are in a multi-tool universe. And what I haven't seen that customers invest as much time in is really figuring out how to determine the traffic flow of those tools. what tool is the right tool for what person? And what person gets more than one tool? And a lot of that can get flushed out within the persona-based business intelligence engagement that Ryan talked about today. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap the presentation and move into our day one recap. Ryan, thank you so much for your insights. Excellent presentation.